Patrick Beatty Reviews, the #1 for news. It's Patrick Beatty Reviews, #1 for news. Yeah. Tune in, get up. Yeah, what's up?
Keep the change, you filthy animal.
What is up, my gaggly geeks? It is time to talk about The Woman King. This is a long overdue review that it came out a few months ago. This is directed by Gina Prince Bythewood, stars Viola Davis, Tuso Mbedu, Lashana Lynch. This is a historical epic inspired by true events. Mark, we'll get into that part. And is taking place in the Kingdom of Dahomey, one of the most powerful states of Africa in the 18th and 19th century. This is a group of women warriors that were the king's personal army, and Viola Davis is the leader of this army. You get to see what life is like as neighboring tribes cause different warring problems, and you deal with the slave issue with England and all the European countries coming and either doing deals with different African leaders and different tribes that end up being super wealthy because of the slave trade, which they address a little bit with John Boyega's character. There's a lot of different things about this film. But first, I want to talk about the merits of the movie itself, and then Mark, we'll get into a little bit about a discussion we had about true story that ended up getting everybody at the Megaplex all riled up. But first, welcome Mark from the Visually Stunning Movie Podcast. How are you?
I am excellent, sir. How you been?
Oh, very good. We'll put up where people can follow you and just to pontificate with me about this film. What were your thoughts going in, and what did you think after seeing the movie?
Going in, I thought it was going to be a well done movie. I knew Viola Davis was not going to attach herself to something that came out garbage. Mm-hmm. So I had good feelings going in. I didn't do historical research. They said based on true events. I was like, okay, we'll talk about that later. But I was like, okay, let's go see what it is. So no, I wasn't down on it. I was kind of excited to see how they were going to handle this group of Black Amazon warriors, because they're called that in the film by one of the other characters, I think. So so we had the Amazonians and Wonder Woman. I was like, oh, let's see this historical equivalent. So yeah, I was ready for it.
Well, we have the actresses in this, the warriors, are jacked. Like, oh my God, training that they had to go through. Viola Davis, how old is she? We need to look that up to give props, 50? Not to I wonder how she feels about that. To be like, how old are you? How amazing is it? You know what I mean?
Yeah. But she's in great shape.
Holy cow, 57 years old, and wow. She was doing moves like straight. She was doing moves like she was a new superhero.
Yeah,
it was insane, and the level of action that they had in this, where it's just a drama biopic or a drama. What would you call it?
It's a historical epic.
Historical epic. Super astounding. One of the best parts of it.
Yeah, definitely. The action is, actually the action is great. But in terms of historical accuracy, that was actually one of my, not historical accuracy. I just felt like they Hollywooded it up.
Oh yeah, for sure.
And it's just like, why? You have this great story.
Well, like Hollywooded up, meaning like the angles and stuff are very much like the fighting style is very much clean, set up, and maybe a little bit over stylized in some portions. But when it comes to like the warriors themselves and their like the chants and the things, all I feel are fairly accurate to what.
And the living situation and the training situation, all of that is great. But once you get to the actual combat, I just felt like, see, they didn't have to do some of the things that they did to try to make it interesting or compelling. It's like no, it's already there,
right?
So that was the action wasn't disappointing. The fact that they felt the need to do that was disappointing. That's on Hollywood. That's not on this incredible cast of actresses,
right?
That did all of this stuff. I mean, that's amazing. Their stunt crew probably didn't get paid enough.
And of course, you're not going to get nominated for the award that has yet to be put up for the Oscars. I definitely think that eventually they need to bring in that category. But at the end of the day, Viola Davis sells it, and there's so much to say about her character and her dynamics between John Boyega and with Thuzo Mbedu, who is essentially starting the ranks of this army organization and trying to become one of them. As the story progresses, you learn more about her, Viola Davis's character, and I think that dynamic was really well done too. Viola Davis is acting her heart out in this, and I definitely feel that she's going to be nominated when it comes to award season. That's the strongest point, I would say, for me. The action is really good, and the performances are incredible.
Oh yeah, 100%, 100%. Viola Davis is hands down the best thing about this film, and she should get a nomination for one of the major awards, whether it goes all the way to Oscars. I know, but the awards people should have her on their short list. Mm-hmm. It is the relationships that some of the relationships in this film are also kind of narratively problematic for me. Again, going back to, did we need to do this because it feels so Hollywood? And you can throw up your spoiler if you want, but I'll try not to. But
do we need to spoil it? We need to do it.
Only
nice.
Yeah. So if you haven't seen The Woman King, just plug your ears for a second. But yeah, the fact that there's a lost child thing, they didn't actually need that. It was right there. They didn't need to make that connection again, and it's an example of a studio not trusting the material enough and the performances enough. They're just, it's like, well, what do we need to do? And it's like, well, we'll do this because that has been done in the past. That works. I think it's unnecessary in this film. I think the standard militaristic relationships that we've established in the course of this film is enough. But apparently the studio did not agree.
There's a lot of stuff in the film, and this is where I guess we can jump into it, because the I feel we both can agree the good far outweighs the negative when it comes to this movie.
Yeah.
And we're both going to end up giving this a positive review. However, it does have to be said, when it's saying that it's based on true events, or when any film is using that title, and there's a ton of different variations of that, inspired by true events, based on a real story, this is a true story, anything to try to hype up what everything you're about to see at being actually accurate. This movie does the same thing that those other films have. So I'm not going to say that it's any different with what it was doing with its marketing than any of the others have. Yep. But this is the one that, for some reason, all of the critics and all of the people decided to jump in and have a lot to say about the historical accuracy of it, mainly when it comes to the king, to the tribe specifically, and what their motivations were and what they were actually doing in the real life. And I won't I'll let everybody basically look into that themselves to know the difference between the two. And basically, not to taint the experience, go watch the movie first and check it out and see if that changes your influence on it. But what would you say to the idea, and this is where we got upset with the argument, of in the future there being some type of way to safeguard whether the historical accuracies are actually accurate and not just suggested or turned in a certain way? Like, there's one thing to maybe like change timeline events, but to where there's completely different, like if Quentin Tarantino got away with saying this is a true story with Once Upon a Time in Hollywood, that would be completely asinine, and nobody would buy into it, and he would almost make it a parody. But a lot of times some of these films can get away with that and you wouldn't know it.
Yeah. So the argument, for all you poor people that are about to have to listen to this, the argument is there's documentaries, there's based on real events, or based on a true story, inspired by a true story. And of course, my favorite is, I heard this from this guy who knew my brother this one time. Mm-hmm. So once you hear based on a true story, know that yes, something about that movie is real. What that something is, and to what degree it is the issue that Hollywood gets to play fast and loose with. Now, The argument that Patrick and I had is that Patrick
Discussion.
feels there needs to be, or should be,
Mhm.
there should be some sort of akin to the rated G, PG, PG-13, R, NC-17 rating.
Mhm.
There should be a rating for films that claim based on true events, inspired by a true story, to determine what ratio of reality to BS exists within that film.
Let me change that up, because I'm still sticking with that idea, but
Okay.
I would compare this more to, and this is topical because Elon is running this into the ground, but the Twitter verification situation. That's what I would equate these two, where it's not necessarily necessary. Like, you can certainly any person can put out a film anywhere, and it'd be impossible to try to do a committee to do every single film, to vet every single thing, right?
Right.
But if you want that certificate of authenticity, the thing that really says this was, for the most part, at least 85% or more based on factual events and depicted correctly, to have some type of verification stamp, something to say, yep, and here's the proof of that.
And my argument is that if you were to say certified 85% not BS,
Mhm.
what is the 15%? And how are you going to tell people what it is?
It could
Why
be
don't you
broken
just
down
say
right there,
inspired by
like
true
how the
events, go
PG.
do some research?
Well, that's where the motion picture thing can come in, because the MPAA lists exactly why it's rated a certain way.
But
You can have that
in
exact
terms of
bracket,
history,
the layout be the exact same.
but it won't mean anything. It won't.
Maybe
You
not
can
at
say
first,
rated
but
R
it's
for
something that
violence.
could catch on, much like how Rotten Tomatoes, the certificate, caught on with films, or how Letterboxd has been quickly growing with movies. There's new types of verifications that, I don't know, movie audiences are more savvy nowadays, and we can't keep relying on tropes to surprise or excite people. And that also falls in line with accuracy in movies. I think movie audiences want more accuracy than the Hollywoodized version of it. And so to have a stamp like that is something that people progressively would be interested in.
And I think that logistically it's too complex to determine, how do you put a number on it, and
Mm,
how do you determine, because much of history is perception and interpretation. So if
mhm.
we're talking about an event based on something that happened 200 years ago, there's going to be respected scholars. There can be 10 respected scholars, and there will be 10 different interpretations of this period. Who
Sure.
do you go with? And why does this film committee, well, if they only pick the one or two, you know what I mean?
You make a valid point for sure.
To go back
But
to
I do
your Twitter
think that's
verification thing, my issue is that would be that would have audiences allow someone else to tell them what's real, not that there's violence or sex, which everyone can pretty much agree on. There's violence and sex. Everyone's like, oh, there's violence and sex in this movie. I am prepared for when they arrive.
I think it's not taking away their right to choose, or their right to, of whatever this movie is giving an explanation. It's giving
And
context.
I feel there's no way to distill that in a way that does not become an academic discussion as opposed to a simple rating. I
I
do
don't know.
not think you can
I think History
simply
versus
rate
Hollywood.
history.
You've been on that website, right? History versus Hollywood.
I've seen things like it.
And so that's, I think, one of the big things that this film got caught in the crossfire of. They did something for this, but it's mainly just Twitter bots being assholes and racists. Like,
What?
it sucks when
Newsflash,
there's
people.
genuine criticism for stuff, and then some people come in and ruin it for everybody.
Yes,
Like,
that's
any
what people do.
normal, mature conversation gets dumped immediately when somebody comes in and throws something in there. And that's what Elon Musk is adding to Twitter and making more of. So that's great. I think this movie should not suffer from that at the end of the day. I do think story-wise, there's some stuff that could have been worked on. maybe things could have been tuned up better with character dynamics and the Hollywoodization of the fighting. Sometimes it didn't work for some people. It didn't work for Mark. But at the end of the day, the historical accuracies aside, it's still a strong story. I enjoyed it.
It is. And like I said, we don't disagree that Hollywood abuses history. We disagree on how to address that. And I think part of that is incumbent upon the critic. Part of that is incumbent upon the viewer if they're interested in a story that claims to be inspired, to go and find reputable sources. Like I said, I do not want Hollywood telling me or anyone else what is quote unquote real or true, because Hollywood exists.
Hollywood would be historic. It would be historical.
It has to go through someone. Like I said, logistically, I do not believe that is something that you can distill into a
just like in Pawn Stars, man. You got this gold ring that you said came from the Renaissance. Well, let me get a guy. Let me bring a guy to come take a look at this.
Yes, and you're subjected to half-hour episodes of that. Are we going to have a half-hour episode breaking down every historical movie?
You got a movie where you say that Gandhi chopped someone up with a machete and then ate him. Okay, let me bring a guy in to take a look at this. And then they can be like, wait a minute. He did eat the guy, but he didn't chop him up. It's like, wait a minute.
Again, I think it's unworkable. I think it's incumbent on the viewer. If the story is that compelling, look here. Let me. I'm going to put the mic way up here so no one can get confused by what I'm about to say.
Now it's ASMR, Mark.
Do not believe anything Hollywood tells you. It's all fake.
VSMP ASMR.
Yeah, it's fake. If Hollywood tells you it's true, it's fake. So go, if you like something that looks real or that they claim is kind of real, go look it up. There are 100 sources out there. Wikipedia is not one of them.
But let me ask you this:
clue you in.
Is that title necessary? Why are you putting the based on a true story title up? If not, you're intentionally wanting to lead audiences to believe that things are true.
Part of that
isn't that inherently dishonest if there's more than 50% of it inaccurate?
Okay. And I'll tell you why. Because one, it's a CYA move, depending on what you're based on true eventing.
Right.
So another film that recently came out, She Said, based on real events, based on the book that the people that did the thing say they did. So things happened. If you haven't watched She Said, it's about the New York Times.
I'll be recording a review later on about it.
So there's that movie. So the reporters did the work, wrote a book, and someone adapted the book to the film. And then the director interpreted that script. So now you just, in something that's happened in the last 5 years, how many different translations of those events have happened? So
it's interesting.
You know what I mean? So again, part of it's a CYA thing, depending on what you're doing. Part of it is,
but I do think the existing system is fundamentally broken, and saying that we don't do anything about it will not help it.
I think I don't think the industry can fix itself. I think, again, it's if there's something blatantly wrong with a historical thing, the critics should point that out and maybe point you in a direction to go get the real story. But stop and think about this. How much historical accuracy is in Abe Lincoln Vampire Hunter? A lot of his early career is accurate. There's just no vampires.
But did it start with based on a true story?
No, but
that's the point.
But you're using
the point. That's what I'm saying.
It may have. Use that title, it might actually have said some of this
with
stuff.
With great title comes great responsibility.
So, but like I'm just saying, if you don't want the industry to regulate itself, then the only other body capable is the government. And I believe we all don't want the government telling us what is real and what is not, because the government lies to itself. They lie to themselves. So now you have to go to academia.
We went to
academia, and yes, go to academia and get your historical stuff. But get your sources and go look it up for yourself. If you watch a movie,
all right, let's route it back. Let's route it back. Okay. I want to know what people think. Who's on whose side, and do you think that there could be something that could help with this based on a true story? Is it even a big a deal as I'm thinking it is, or are we just full of it and we're just two old men yelling at the wind about? about what we're doing here. Yeah. Overall, though, what was your rating on this?
No, overall, I enjoyed it a lot. Like I said, understanding, I looked into the real history afterwards. I was like, okay, they deviated here, here, and here, but the broad strokes, and even if they had decided to just make this a movie, said, nope, this is fake. And if I didn't know any better to go look it up, then I'd be like, oh, it's a solid action film.
Right.
And with some good performances. So it's like, yeah, no, it's fine. It's 6.5, 7. I got no problem with this film at all.
No, I thought it was great. And if you take the historical accuracies aside, which I've done it for many other films. I did it for Weird, which, by the way, it's 100% accurate. I don't know why I even decided to do that.
That's
But
true.
this, I think it's a really strong character story, and I dug the action. I know it was ridiculous, but I loved it so much. So I gave it an 8 out of 10. But again, let us know what you guys think. Mark, tell the people where they can find you.
If you're over on Twitter, we're at VS Movie Podcast. The website, vsmoviepodcast.com. We're on Instagram and YouTube, Visually Stunning Movie Podcast. You can find us there. And wherever you listen to podcasts, just search for Visually Stunning Movie Podcast and we will pop up.
Whoop whoop. And of course, go to patrickbaiterviews.com. Follow me on all the stuff that's listed down below. Thank you again, Mark, so much for doing this rapid fire of reviews. I'm sure we're going to see you again talking about more because the screeners keep coming and they don't stop coming, as Smash Mouth once said.
Fact.
Right.
And I don't know that I'm an all-star, but I'm trying.
Oh, man. Well, I will see you at the next one, man. And we will see you at the next review. Take care.